All right, the cardiovascular system is the next one that we're going to go into. At the beginning of this presentation, we're going to do a small activity. Keep in mind, our cardiovascular system is our heart, along with all of our blood vessels, our arteries, veins, and capillaries. So let's go ahead and do this quick activity. I am going to include this on the video so that we can see this from home as well, in case if we want to go over it. But this is a brief understanding of all the various systems as well, and what some of the major components are in each. All right, so our digestive system. What do we need to include in our digestive system? So first we're going to start out with the stomach. Put that there. What else goes? Okay, so we include our small intestine in there and our large intestine as well. Anything else? Food has to get down here somewhere, somehow. So the esophagus right here. Okay, and that takes care of our digestive system. Now next is our skeletal system. So what components would we include in the skeletal system? Okay, we're going to start out with that rib cage. Which one else? We're going to go with the pelvic bone as well. Is your spinal cord part of your skeletal system? Is it? See how I took it away? No, your spinal column, even though you think of it as that's part of your central nervous system. So let's put this rib cage back and let's put, what else do you guys have? Okay, obviously your skull, and we still need our femur. Where does our femur go? Okay. All right, there's our skeletal system there. And again, these are just some of the major components of it. Our circulatory and respiratory system. Okay, so we're going to go with the lungs. Heart goes as well. What else? Your veins and artery. The brain? As part of the circulatory and respiratory? I don't think so. Keep looking. Circulatory and respiratory. This is your trachea. Right? So is that going to be part of it? Okay. If you don't have that trachea, air can't get down there. Okay. All right. Next is our nervous system. So now we're going to include the spinal cord. Right, this is your nerve net. Obviously, you need your brain. Okay, and now for this, your senses are your optic nerve, your auditory nerve, they're all still part of your nervous system. So your eyes, your nose, and your ears are all under that umbrella term of your nervous system as well. Okay? Now on your PowerPoint at home, the one that you downloaded off of the website, you don't have this slide. And this slide has all of the answers, or rather what you have are the answers, and these are the questions. So what you're going to do now is you're going to read each one of these, and you're going to take a guess as to which one of the slides that you have on the PowerPoint apply to each one of these. I will pause the recording to give you time to write because you don't have this slide, and so you're going to write these things down pertaining to each slide or on the slide that it pertains to. So, the system that differentiates self from non-self and neutralizes potentially pathogenic organisms or substances. Which one of the slides that you have, which one would apply to that? That is going to be your immune system. Okay? Now, the key thing here, and let me go back to the list. The key thing here is potentially pathogenic organisms. We're talking about fighting off and thwarting off any kind of bacteria and virus and so forth from entering your body. So take a second now, take a moment to write this down. All right, now on the second one, provides support for means of motion. What slide is that one for? He says skeletal, and he would be correct. Okay? Your skeletal system is the one that provides the support for the means of motion. Your muscles contracting and releasing are what allow you to move. However, they wouldn't be able to do anything without the skeletal support in your body. So take a moment now to write this statement beside your slide for skeletal system. Since this one is short, I'm not going to pause. We'll go on to the next one. Removes waste from the body. Which one is that going to be? Now, digestion would be kind of what some people would generally think, but in reality, your digestion is not responsible for removing waste. It's responsible for something else. I'm not going to say because it's coming up, but the excretory system, your kidney, your bladder, the uterus, those are major organs that are part of your excretory system that excretes waste and toxins and so forth from the body. Now the next one says responsible for the ingestion, digestion, and absorption of food. Very simple. Which one is that? That's going to be your digestive system. Your digestive system is not as complex as we would think it would be. Your esophagus to your stomach, your liver also helps to break down. Food is going to travel through your small and large intestine to then eventually leave the body. But this is the part where food is going to be ingested, digested, stored within that system. Now the next one, the system that is involved in the intake and exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the body and the environment. What system does that? That obviously is your respiratory system. Your nasal cavity and your oral cavity have a connection. It's a small little opening on the back here. It's called the nasopharynx. When you breathe in, air goes in through the nasopharynx, and it can also go through the oral cavity down into the trachea. Remember that when you are breathing, the trachea is open, the epiglottis is in an upright position. When you go to swallow the bolus of food and liquid is when that epiglottis is going to quickly come down and cover the trachea right about here so that food goes through the esophagus and not the trachea. Air will continue down in here into your lungs, and your diaphragm is that muscle that contracts and releases to expand and restrict the size of the lungs as well. So let me return to the list so you can write that down next to respiratory. Now the framework of the body consisting of bones and other connective tissues which protects and supports the body tissue and the internal organ is going to be what? That's going to be your muscular system as well. Okay? So I'll give you a moment to copy this down by that slide. All right, now the next slide. The question and external stimuli. That one is going to be the nervous system. Okay? Remember that you have your central nervous system, which is your brain, midbrain, and spinal cord, and your peripheral nervous system, that nerve net and all your nerves that expand outward throughout your body, your arms and legs and so forth. So take a moment to write this down next to your slide of nervous system. And then I'll do the last one. The system that circulates blood and lymph throughout the body. That one is going to be your circulatory system. So take a moment, write these two statements down next to the last two slides you have left. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the heart and some of the functions of the heart. Our chambers of the heart are what allow blood to pump in and out of the heart. We separate this structure into what we call a left and right atrium and a left and right ventricle. Atriums are, the left atrium and the left ventricle are going to be connected through a valve that allows blood to pass through. The heart has a particular function. One side of the heart receives blood that is, receives blood without oxygen, okay? So it's blood that's carrying a higher level of carbon dioxide. And it's doing this because it's going to eventually make its way to the lungs and exchange that carbon dioxide so that the lungs can expel it out and exchange it for oxygen, make its way through the other side of the heart, the right side of the heart, and now that blood has oxygen in it. And then it's going to be pumped from the heart through the blood vessels to make its way to the rest of the body so that it will carry oxygen out to the rest of the body. It's a huge misconception that the heart is located slightly to the right in the body. It's actually right smack in the middle. We sometimes can't get a good feeling of that heart rate when we put our hand right smack in the middle, because our hand in the middle would be in a concave area of our rib cage, and sound travels sometimes through what we call conduction. And so sound is going to basically reverberate off of the heart onto the rib cages and muscles and so forth, and make its way out to the exterior layer of skin. A little bit of that is partly responsible for you being able to feel that heartbeat when you put your hand on your chest. And that's why you're not going to feel too much when you put your hand right smack in the middle. How large do you think your heart is? It's about the size of your closed fist. Its function is to pump blood in and out throughout the body, and obviously if it stops beating, your circulatory system would fail. So let's talk about the primary functions of the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system has three primary functions. Number one, to transport, it's part of your immune system, or to provide immunity, and that's closely linked to transportation, because the immune system is going to have the white blood cells being transported, And it also helps to stabilize the pH and body temperature as well. So, transportation. Your cardiovascular system transports gases, it transports oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's going to take carbon dioxide away from cells, and it's going to bring oxygen to the cells. You have cells located throughout your entire body, and oxygen needs to be in those cells. But when those cells go through certain chemical reactions, that oxygen, by removing carbon, that oxygen is sometimes, and that's just an example, is going to become carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide needs to be taken out of the cell, taken over to the lungs so it can be released out from the body, and then oxygen needs to be brought back. Blood cells, your red blood cells, will do that trip of back and forth from lung through heart to the cells, back through the heart, back to the lung, and each time they make their stop of cells and lungs, they are exchanging carbon dioxide for oxygen. When they're at the point of the cell, they are going to leave oxygen and take carbon dioxide. When they are at the point of the lungs, they're going to leave carbon dioxide and take oxygen. This exchange, the heart is what basically pumps the blood through to keep it moving. A blood cell, that's the job, that's the basic job of a red blood cell. And it will do this about 8 times in 1 minute. So it's going to transport these gases back and forth in this manner. It's also going to transport nutrients to cells. We talked about diffusion when something is going to permeate through that membrane. Well, through diffusion, nutrients can get in through the cells by diffusing through your capillaries, by diffusing through your blood vessels. This is the reason why when I tell you guys that sometimes when you ingest something, smoke something, and eat something, or drink something, eventually it's going to make its way into your bloodstream. It becomes part of your cardiovascular, your circulatory system. And it also transports hormones that need to be transported into your endocrine system. Sorry, let me go back. Oh, I think I'd covered everything here anyway. Sorry. All right, the cardiovascular system. The heart is that muscular organ that's responsible for pumping blood out to the rest of the body. And there are 2 pathways that it will do this through. We have your systemic circulation and your pulmonary circulation. Now, your systemic circulation, blood running through your systemic circulation, will eventually reach your pulmonary and back and forth. There's a picture coming up ahead that it shows a good depiction of the 2 pathways and how they connect through the heart. So, let's talk about your right side first, your right atrium and your right ventricle. This is the superior vena cava. Superior meaning above, located above the heart. And this is your inferior vena cava. These veins, this is a major vein in your body, and blood is going to travel through these 2 veins into the right atrium. Now the thing to note here is that the blood that is traveling through a vein to go to the heart does not have does not have oxygen. So this is blood without oxygen that's going to travel through these veins into the right atrium. There is a valve here that will allow this blood to travel in through the right ventricle, and in the back of the right ventricle there is another valve. It's obviously not shown here in this picture, But through that valve, it will then leave the heart through this artery. Okay? Now, please remember and keep note that blood that travels through veins does not have oxygen, and it is making its way back to the heart. Okay? Then we have the left side. The left side involves the flow of blood that does have oxygen. So remember, when the blood left through the aorta out to the lungs, it did that so that it goes to the lungs to make the exchange of leaving the carbon dioxide and then taking the oxygen. But it can't go straight from the lungs back to the part of the body where it needs to go. So it needs to go back to the heart so that the heart can pump it to where it's supposed to go. So that case, it's going to enter now through the left atrium. Blood is going to come in through the left atrium, which is connected to the artery, and it has oxygen at this point. It's going to pass through the left ventricle, and from there it leaves through the body, maintaining blood out to the rest of the body. So your left atrium receives blood through your pulmonary veins, and it's going to pass through the left ventricle, and then it's going to pass through the aortic semilunar valve that will eventually make its way out with oxygen to the rest of the body. When it makes it to the cell, it's going to make the exchange of leaving the oxygen and taking the carbon dioxide from the cell. When it comes back to the heart, where is it coming in through? It's going to come in through here. It has no oxygen. It's going to make its way through here, leave, go to the lungs, back to the heart, and when it made it to the lungs, it made the exchange of leaving the carbon dioxide and gaining oxygen. Come back to the heart, again through the left atrium, pass through the left ventricle, and then out the artery again, and it just keeps doing this over and over and over. When it leaves that left artery, it now has oxygen, and it's back on its way to a cell in the body that needs oxygen. This is the picture that I was talking to you earlier about that shows a pretty good depiction of the two systems. Here is your systemic that reaches the top part of the body, and your pulmonary, if you're Hispanic, you know that word pulmonary shows a resemblance to lungs in Spanish. This is the system that moves from the heart to the lungs. And again, your systemic is the part that goes outward from the heart to other parts of the body. Now let's talk about your blood vessels. You have three main types of blood vessels. You have your arteries, you have your veins, and you have your capillaries by size. And I went through them right now by size. Your arteries are your largest ones. Okay? Blood is going to leave the heart through your artery. So it's obviously it has oxygen at this point. Now, arteries don't connect straight to veins. They need a capillary to connect through there. We have what are called arterioles, which are smaller arteries that are then going to connect to a capillary. Capillaries related to arteries. Through this capillary, here is where diffusion occurs. Remember I talked to you about materials and particles and nutrients and so forth, even toxins that you ingest into your body. They're going to diffuse into these capillaries. you have millions of capillaries located throughout your body. Capillaries, in fact, are so small that when blood runs through it, red blood cells, for example, can travel through there, but they have to travel through there in a single file line. They can't even travel side by side. The space is very limited. Capillaries are those connectors between arteries and veins. So when you have to get blood from here around through the body and go through diffusion of any material, of things that we eat and so forth, and back around through the vein, it's the capillaries that connect the two. So here you have your arteriole, your smaller artery, and your venule, which are your smaller veins. Capillaries must connect these two. And through here is where osmosis, that semi-permeable membrane, right here, the capillary has a semi-permeable membrane. Particles are going to diffuse in through here and now become part of your bloodstream, part of your circulatory system. Capillary is that bridge between the vein and arteries so that small materials in the blood cells can diffuse through them. All right, your arteries. We talk about blood pressure. It's important to understand low and high blood pressure in regards to the arteries. In the inside of the artery, you have what we call the arterial walls. Now, when blood passes through here, those blood cells and platelets and so forth are going to crash against the arterial walls. They're going to ping up against them and continue to just crash as they're moving. This is in reality what determines blood pressure. Subglottal pressure, for example, trapping air under the epiglottis to make the sound of a letter like the letter P, that's different. You're just trapping air, so you're creating pressure, like for example, the way a water hose at your house creates pressure. Blood pressure is different. Blood pressure is basically measured by how much of that hitting those blood cells are doing on the inside of this wall. Now your arteries carry blood that are going to have oxygen. So they're going to have, and they're carrying it throughout all the different parts of your body. The inside then needs to be elastic. Why? Because your body moves all over the place. So they need to be elastic so that they don't pinch, for example, like the way a water hose does, and then that would restrict your circulation momentarily. In certain locations, like your knee, for example, in certain locations in your body, they can. But guess what? You don't have an artery passing through your knee because your aorta ends slightly above your knee. But you do have capillaries that connect to veins and run down into your calves and your foot, and those are the ones that they cut their circulation. So when you release that knee after a while and you feel those pins and needles sensation going through your leg, those are those blood cells hitting against your veins, and that's that feeling that you feel. The blood rushing back, and it actually expands the elasticity of the vein to the point where it hurts and it bothers. You lose your ability to walk momentarily when that happens. So again, these capillaries are those tiny little thin-walled blood vessels that connect veins and arteries, and those blood cells are going to travel through there. Like I said, they travel through there, and these capillaries are so small that they have to travel through there in a single file line. Before I move on to the next slide, well, we'll talk about blood pressure in the next coming section. Here you have the venule and the arteriole, and you have the diffusion occurring here. So when particles of something that you eat and so forth diffuse through here, it will actually expand here. It will expand the area. And in some locations in your body, you have a valve. And that valve needs to open and close through there. That could be a problem whenever you don't have a valve that is properly working correctly or not. The capillaries allow for nutrients, oxygen, and water to diffuse out of blood and into the tissue. And waste products like carbon dioxide are going to diffuse from the tissue and go into the blood. Okay? That's one of the primary functions that capillaries do as well. This is the valve that I was telling you about here, where when these veins in your body expand to a point, like high blood pressure can ruin it and cause problems, your veins can dilate. Normal veins will be this shape. But then a dilated vein, through high blood pressure, for example, the valve here is unable to close. And so when the valve is unable to close, you have a leaky valve. Things like this can lead to internal bleeding. Okay, something to look for. These valves are also very important because blood needs to flow in one direction. Your circulatory system moves blood one way. Now, if you all of a sudden start having blood flowing the opposite direction, you're going to have a major problem in your body. So these valves need to open and close accordingly. All right, this is the end of this recording for part 1.